you reach to a point where you are not satisfied with why a particular thing is behaving or functioning in such a way.
If we pick one idea and follow that consistently, it will give us results. But if we put those 100 ideas and we are in the situation like let's follow. Hello and welcome to the Priggya Arora Show, where we discuss law, entrepreneurship, and innovation with people who have been there and done that. My name is Priggya Arora, founder of PA Legal, and today we have Dr. Hemang Shah with us. He is an advisor in the field of innovation and strategy. He has incubated many startups in India, and we are here to learn from him. Welcome, Dr. Hemang, on the show.
Hey, thanks, Priggya. Thank you for having me over. And I love the quote on your wall, which is "Your innovation is worth it." So I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Great. So, Dr. Hemang, we'll start with your life and your life story. Like, how did you become the person today, and how did you enter into the field of innovation?
Uh, Priggya, that's a pretty, I guess, I don't want to bore you with a long chronological answer. I think the short answer is I stumbled my way into it. I wish I can say that I planned everything, but more than anything, I followed a certain curiosity to know uh, how does this work? How do certain products work? How can we make it better? And that line of thinking led me to reading a bit more about how innovation works,
Yeah.
and how people innovate, how, what are the different techniques which apply to it. And even more so at the personal level, that how can I contribute, to whatever I was working on. So along the years, I've found myself in R&D roles. I found myself in bridge roles, which combine things at different disciplines. So it's been fun to sort of explore, like, just some tunnel vision. That, okay, how can I make this better? And all this curiosity, which led me to this side reading, somehow, tended to help me at the
Yeah.
times when I needed it. So that's how I landed where I am.
That's so good. So it's like, our traits end up into whatever we want to do in life. For example, if you're curious about knowing stuff, how stuff works, you can enter into this field. Like that curiosity is something which is very, very important.
I think it's fundamental, and
Yeah.
not just to work in the innovation space as such, but I think in everything that we are doing these days, if you have curiosity, that's going to be your X factor. So if
Correct.
you have it, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel bad when you're stuck. If answers don't satisfy you, or if
Yeah.
you're not able to solve something fully, as long as you're curious, it's you're going to innovate. If not today, just keep at it. Tomorrow, you.
Correct. So, Dr. Hemang, many people think that innovation is something which is very, very difficult to do. It's a field which is out of our reach. Maybe young engineers also, they think patents are very big thing, like something big has done. But on the ground level, because you have so much experience in this field, you also know that it is not a very big deal if you follow the process, a journey, what you also call it as the innovation journey, or we call it as an innovation journey. If you follow a process, eventually something good is going to happen. So, can you briefly tell us about the innovation journey, or which young entrepreneurs, engineers can follow?
Yeah, Pragya, your question is hitting many notes, right? The first one is anyone who is new to the area,
Correct.
whether you are a fresh college graduate, or you could be someone with experience, landing yourself in an unknown area.
Yeah.
Right? The fundamental thing, again, I'll get back to, is you are going to be curious, because the minute you try to learn something which is new, you're
Hmm.
going to be naturally asking questions that, hey, what is happening here? Why does it work this way? Why haven't they looked at things that way? So you learn by asking all these questions. Even when someone is say going through an induction program where they're telling you that, hey, here's how a certain process works, or here's how a product works. At the back of your head, as you try to understand it, you're going to be coming up with these questions. So the start of this innovation journey is going to be those fundamental questions.
Yeah.
And if you just if you take something for granted without understanding it, that's when you are cutting your journey short. And
Correct.
that's what leads to people not innovating and giving up, because they're like, hey, I've run out of ideas. So I don't think you've run out of ideas, you've run out of questions.
Correct.
So I think follow that question and keep answering that. And at some point of time, you will reach a question which has not been solved yet. Or you'll come up with an observation that if you take, for example, a product, and holding this cup in my hand, and you know it has warm water, and I know that in 5 minutes from now this water will be lukewarm, or at best at room temperature.
Yeah.
And I could ask a question like, hey, what is it that I could do to, let's say, make sure that this holds that heat for a much longer time? It could be a question like that, right? So as you keep asking all these questions, the what's fundamental to the innovation journey is reaching a point where you're like, hey, here's a question worth, or here's a problem worth solving.
Correct.
And that's a key pain point which no one has addressed before. Or if people have, let's say, solved it, that solution doesn't, meet our expectations. There's still a lot more to be done.
Yeah.
And from that point onwards, you start unfolding the other aspects, which is ideation and prototyping, and then iterating.
Correct.
So what's fundamental to the journey again is this problem worth solving.
Correct. So I think very beautifully explained this, and like I also speak to a lot of young entrepreneurs, and some people would say we don't get ideas. How do people do that? So I always tell them, because that is the small practice which I did. So when I started on my journey, I used to think, oh, I don't get ideas. I don't know how people get ideas. But then when I started writing those ideas, I was like, oh my God, people usually, you have so many ideas. So sometimes, because our brain is trained in a way to generate ideas, but not in a way to store ideas, those ideas just slip off.
Very well said, Priggya. That happens, right? Because you've gone into so many situations where, like, hey, I thought of this thing and
Yeah.
I didn't act on it. And then you saw either some publication which came out on what you were thinking about, or some product, and so on. And I guess the main difference between, let's say, me in that state versus that person who launched that product is the other person took action on it, and I
Correct.
did.
Yeah.
And I didn't take action on it quite likely because it was lost somewhere, in my mind, and I didn't keep a record of
Yeah.
it. And so yeah, we don't keep better records of what we are thinking about. So I think that's one thing which we all need to get better at. And again, over that, periodically looking at the list. So just uh, everyone works differently. Like, so
Yeah.
my mind works in such a way that if I have noted it down, I may not necessarily need to look it up. But
Correct.
if I pick it up, let's say every week or so,
Mhm.
then it's like, you're fine tuning. Like, okay, let me think about this thing. I left it midway.
Correct.
Like, we may not solve things fully. We have so many things going on in our lives these days. I
Mm-hmm.
think so I think, yeah, to not just noting, what ideas come to your head, but
Correct.
also periodically reviewing those, that are there any loose ends which I need to tie up? Are
Yeah.
there I'm like, hey, okay, I thought of it, let's discard it. It's not worth it. I think even that process is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we need to act on it eventually. So, Dr. Mang, you also mentioned about, once we have some kind of raw idea, we have the processes like ideation, prototyping, then iterating onto them. So, what do you think is the most important aspect of this journey, and where the innovator should focus on, like the main element where they should focus on?
But Priya, I just noticed, please call me Hemang. It's I should have mentioned earlier. So I think the innovation journey, what's really, really important is starting off with an observation. So the process which I like to follow is called design thinking.
Yeah,
It has 5 stages, and the model which I follow has come from the Stanford B School. So
correct.
that model I feel is quite intuitive to understand. And the first stage over there is they call it empathy, but it really means of collecting a whole lot of observations for the person you're solving for.
Mm.
And that person that customer could be anyone. It could be, let's say, a product which you're bringing out in the market. It could be the average person like who's going to buy that product, or it could be, let's say, your next team. If you're
Correct.
working, let's say, a company, or if you're working for clients, it could be the person who's going to be inheriting the product after you're done working on it. So
Yeah.
the first stage is always understanding what are my customers, facing in terms of problems. What are their pain points that they are facing? What problems are they expressing verbally? And there are times when we are frustrated by something, but we don't know it yet. So we don't express it. So we are craving for what is called as a latent need.
Yeah.
So in your observations and all that, the core thing is to figure out, okay, what are these key pain points which are not being expressed, and if
Correct.
there's something that can be done. And that leads you to defining the core problem to be solved. Okay, so if you don't spend enough time on this thing, everything else that you follow, I
Yeah.
believe that will be like shallow thinking in some sense, right? Because you picked on the lowest hanging fruit and you ran with it, but there may be other alternatives, or it may not solve the customer's requirements completely.
Correct.
Okay, so once you identify that latent need and you define that problem, then you run into what is called as ideation. And ideation is the part where everyone loves to start. Everyone loves to have brainstorming sessions, whiteboarding, throwing ideas left, right, center, because it gets everyone involved, right? We love it.
Yeah.
So that's the easy part. But what's difficult after that is figuring out which of these, you've generated a forest, of ideas, right? Which is a bunch of trees. And that to navigate through that forest, you need to pick one or two paths at the most.
Correct.
So you have to identify those and say, okay, I'm going to take this path and make a prototype out of that.
Yeah.
And as I start making it, I learn whether my assumptions were correct or not. Because ideation, if I use the Hindi word, it's khayali pulao, right? It's
Absolutely.
everyone just throwing things, whether it's realistic, not realistic. But once you start putting things together, your assumptions come to
Correct. I am looking at my whiteboard and getting scared because you just said all khayali pulao are there on my
life.
whiteboard.
Yeah, but I'm sure you'll find that, right? That if you take a few of those ideas and if you start putting it in practice, you're like, okay, I assumed a few things. It's not realistic in some sense today, or it may not be as impactful as it looks on my whiteboard.
Yeah.
But that's why that prototyping exercise is so helpful,
Yeah.
because even at that stage, uh, it should be done in such a way that you fail fast and you fail without putting in too much of time or money.
Yes.
Then after that, if you're satisfied with that, then you go into testing, which is you take, let's say a small subset of who your core users are and say that, hey, I've done this thing. What do you think of it? Can you give me feedback? And that feedback could be that just grab this thing, not worth it. Then you should be okay to going back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
And if the feedback is like, hey, this is great, can you do a few more changes here and there? So that will lead you to some iterations. So that's the broad, I guess, path or template, which I feel, see, it's not unusual, right? It's
Correct.
nothing fundamentally different than what you've heard before. But following that structure has its benefits.
Correct. And I also, Hemang, I also feel like this, as you said, this process is very, very intuitive. It's simple. I'll say it's simple, but it's not easy to follow. Like we just mentioned, if we have so many trees on our whiteboards, we know if we pick one idea and follow that consistently, it will give us results. But if we go put those 100 ideas and we are in the situation like let's follow, but we don't have a correct path to follow. So these that consistency and that sticking on to one idea and taking one idea at a time is also, I think, important.
Yeah, agree. And an element out there, or one interesting way to think about it is when you're ideating, this whiteboarding exercise and all that, that's when you let go of all filters in your head, right?
Yes.
You are open to welcoming crazy ideas, unrealistic ones, way out there ideas, super expensive ones. It doesn't matter. right? So you are like a kid in a toy store. You're having fun. When it comes to filtering and figuring out, uh, what to prototype, I think that's when you put your adult hat on and say, okay, fine. Now I'm an adult, and what makes sense for me to target?
Correct. Absolutely. And I think, like you mentioned, Stanford, I've also read that book on innovation, and it says that innovation is the product of invention and monetization. So that idea should have some monetary value. Then only it's possible to innovate. Otherwise, it will just probably would be of no use to work on.
True. So I think, going back to the start of that journey, which
Correct.
started with observations, right?
Yeah.
And you looked at, let's say, your sets of customers and all that, and then you figured out, what is that core problem that they need to solve. And it's very tempting to start solving that problem at that point itself.
Yeah.
And I think it may make sense to insert an idea or having some understanding that if we solve this problem, what is it that we expect to achieve in terms of let's say performance improvement. Let's say if we solve it, uh, can we do it? And this part, you don't need to have a full answer at this stage itself. It could come, let's say, at the prototyping or that later stage also.
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
But then you should also have this understanding of, okay, is there revenue from it? Right? Is there an ability to create this product, or it could be a feature addition, and determining that, okay, I think it's going to be financially viable for me.
Correct.
So I think, yeah, it's all. Otherwise, you'll have
Very.
things which are way ahead of time. Like a
Yeah.
lot of academic research can tend to be that way, right? Where
Correct.
because that research is done, when it's looking at only certain metrics, that okay, what is the field lacking in terms of knowledge and so on. The commercialization aspect, or necessarily creating that research work into end products, is not important at that point of time. It may be at a certain stage, but you're right. It's helpful to know, I think, that what your end goal is. Like, are you doing research for the sake of research? Are you doing this work for the
Yeah.
sake of, let's say, business? You know, it, and having that clarity is also helpful.
Absolutely. I think very rightly said that end goal should be in mind, then only we should start the journey. Like if you're making it, we should at least know what is the future of what we are spending time, money, resources, and so many things. It's important
True.
to know that as well.
Yeah.
So, Hemang, you're also interested in the field of technology transfer and IP strategy. So, how do you club tech first IP strategy, then technology transfer into the innovation journey?
Now, again, these are topics very close to my heart, and
Yeah.
thankfully, I get to look at them both from a professional and a personal angle. Although what I'll say is a completely from a personal perspective. Uh, I think for both of these, I spend a lot of time working with startups. Uh,
Hmm.
a startup is usually formed when founders are unhappy with, let's say, how existing products are meeting that marketplace, or are performing in the marketplace. Right? So their vision is that we have a certain approach which is going to either 10x or 100x, the user's life. So naturally, their start or their origin is from a view of innovation.
Yeah.
And out there, it's again I guess the environment of that startup is ripe for multiple inventions to occur.
Hmm.
And so having an intellectual property strategy at that point of time is a core requirement. It should
Yeah.
not be an afterthought. It should be like a fundamental premise, right? Because as companies are building various things, that hey, this is, let's say, our tech portfolio that we are building, they have to look at, okay, what is an IP portfolio that we're going to build.
Hmm.
Now, intellectual property is going to be the outcome of a lot of their research work that they are doing, a lot of their uh, product development which they'll do, right? So once you have that, once you are sitting on technology, I think at that point of time also, looking at this space, it's I can't help but say that a lot of startups change their strategy because they have to pivot depending on what the market is telling them. maybe they see a shift in their strategy. So if they have not, let's say, generated or cap or registered any IP portfolio, all the work that they did is just line based. It's so rather, through tech transfer, they can do so much better.
Yeah.
That they can earn some return on all the work that they've done. There's another aspect also. As companies scale up, uh, every startup is different. Not every founder wants to grow their company to, let's say, 1,000 person or a 5,000 person entity.
Correct.
They may be very happy being small, and just focusing on say product innovation.
Correct.
So for them, if they don't want to get into the manufacturing space, whether it's in their country or internationally, tech transfer helps in those domains also, right?
Correct.
And you
Absolutely.
can enable others. All the work that you've done, you are helping other people, I guess, take advantage of the innovations which you're bringing in.
Yeah.
So it's from both sides, right? That you have to look at it as, hey, I'm doing all this work, and IP strategy is going to be important for me to grow, but it's also going to be helpful for me to look at all these other avenues in which I can monetize or commercialize my innovations.
Wow, absolutely amazing. So here, Hemang, I'll ask you one question, which is, people they get very dicey in this situation. Like few startups will think, okay, like many of the subject matter, they are not even patentable. So for that subject matters, they'll ask, is it a good idea to get a patent? Because they are like 70% sure they'll not get a patent, but 30% chances are there that they get a patent. Then in and these are some registrable IP. Then we have unregistered IP in terms of know-how, in terms of trade secret, and things like that. So while technology transfer, do they have to keep in mind all of this, or they can do a tech transfer only when they have an enforceable patent or a registered patent?
I think you have to be open to all forms of IP rights, right? It's
Yeah.
not that there's just one which is going to be, you know, the most powerful IP right. Now,
Yeah.
having said that, I do work in the high tech space, and patents are certainly like the IP right that we all naturally gravitate towards.
Correct.
But again, you have to look at it as a broad landscape, right? Your portfolio is not just on one IP right. It has
Yeah.
to be a combination of these, and all of those are going to be relevant as they scale up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very insightful answer, because people get stuck sometimes with one IP and they're like, oh my God, now what to do? We can't do anything. I said, you can think like a small example. Today I was chatting with a friend and he was like, okay, I can't file a patent on this. Then I suggested, okay, you can't file a patent, but you can register it as so it was a board game. It was a kind of a board
Sure.
game, which are which is a subject matter of designs, and it is nearly an equal protection as of patent. So after speaking to me, they were like, oh, we never thought to
Yeah.
consider this as well.
Yeah, so I think this is a problem that we came across, and I'll take this opportunity to plug something
Mhm.
that we've been working with DPIIT and
Yeah.
Delhi. That's when working with startup and particularly founders. This is a this was sort of one of the problems that we would come across. That the
Mm.
understanding of intellectual property would vary like by a great deal. There'd be
Yeah.
folks who would be just completely unaware, and of course, then you have some category of folks who, let's say, have in their prior work experience, they've known what IP is and how it works. And in between, also you have, like your friend, such
Mm.
varying levels of understanding. So
Correct.
there is there are a lot of resources which they can tap into. Firstly, they can talk to folks like you who are so helpful, leveraging your the ability to connect with you on LinkedIn, on other social media platforms, right? I know in particular the Indian IT community is so friendly and approachable
Yeah.
that so many of us are doing things pro bono just out of love, right? That the awareness needs to increase,
Correct.
right?
Absolutely.
If you look at how the IP in the offices are being proactive, the growth rates of whichever metric you take a look at, those are all signs of encouragement. Uh, and And then separately, you have many IP learning courses. So we developed a course dedicated for startups and SMEs. It's
Yes.
called L2 Pro. And later on, if you like, I'll share the link with you. It's a completely free course that is meant for startups and SMEs to understand really how IP strategy works and what are the various nuances like you discussed.
Yeah.
So I think this uh, ability to inform themselves. So again, what I'd like to tell most of the founders is that you don't need to, let's say, become a patent agent, or you don't need to, go through that legal curriculum.
Correct.
But you do need to understand a few things. My analogies is I'm decent with finance. I could do my own taxes, but I'd rather leave that work to a chartered accountant.
Correct.
But I do need to take care of let's say broadly, okay, what are the various ways in which, let's say, personal finance works. So similarly, inform yourself about how intellectual property works, and then turn towards the experts. We have so many of them.
And I'll also suggest I'll tag the link in the description. Go check out the course because it is I have personally checked it out, and it is in the language which startups and MSMEs can understand. It is not in the language that only legal professionals understand. So do check it out if you're interested in this field.
Yeah. Thanks, Priggya.
So, Hemang, now would you like to give some advice to people who are aspiring innovators? Anything that you would like to give them?
I think I'll repeat that. Keep the curiosity hat on always, right? Always be questioning things, how things work, and so on. Maintain a question bank like what you were suggesting, or an idea bank as such.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid, right, to get into uncharted waters.
Wow.
Like as you go through them, it's your curiosity which will take you across, and opportunities will open up.
Wow, amazing. So now we'll do a quick rapid fire round with you. And after that, we'll reiterate these points because these are the points I believe everybody should take with them. So first we'll do a quick rapid fire round, which is like let's start. What are three things you are grateful for?
Family, friends, and education.
Great. Two traits that you think are useful for an innovator.
Uh, Curiosity and persistence.
Wow. And one aspiration you have for the future.
I want India to continue its path on the innovation regime.
Wow, amazing. So now you can mention the key takeaways for our audience, and I know people would love to take these things away from you. Not away, like they'll be joining you on this journey.
Yeah. No, thanks, Priggya, for doing this thing. So the key takeaways are going to be curiosity and persistence. Curiosity is the start of your innovation journey, right? So the questions are why, where, how, what, and why is the most fundamental one. And if you reach to a point where you are not satisfied with why a particular thing is behaving or functioning in such a way, know that a journey is about to unfold. And after that, you have to be persistent at getting to that level of understanding, uh, which will again lead you to, okay, what can you do to make it better?
Yeah.
So if you keep at it again, that's when innovations are realized. So you look at every innovator, they didn't just have ideas. They
Yeah.
backed up their ideas with action over long periods of time.
Wow. So start with why, back up your ideas with action, and you'll do great.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Hemang, for accepting my invitation and for being on the show. It was amazing chatting with you.
Likewise, Prigya, and love what you're doing and keep on inspiring more people. We need more innovators, not just in India, but worldwide. And your efforts are going to yield remarkable results. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey there, thank you for attending today's session. If you enjoyed today's session, do follow our channel and consider sharing it with a friend. My name is Priggya Arora, daughter of inspiring parents, alumna of IIT Kharagpur, engineer turned lawyer and entrepreneur, and now founder of PL Legal, where we help creators and innovators protect their intellectual property. Thank you.